Need some milk to go with this. Make it really good. Really want to thank DAC, Data Activation Center, for sending me the cookies for Christmas. That was awfully nice of them. And I've been sitting here munching on them while I'm putting all this stuff together. So I probably need to lay off the cookies for a little bit. But anyways, hey guys, welcome back to Surveying with Robert's Tuesday Tip. So today I want to talk about IP addresses, static IP versus dynamic IP. So I guess the first thing I want to tell you is if you guys are looking for a SIM card for your data collector, you really need to reach out, or even for your, like I've got this 980 sitting here with a AT&T static SIM card in it. If you need a SIM card for a data collector for a data plan, I really encourage you guys to reach out to Data Activation Center, my friends. Call them up, get set up, get you a stack of SIM cards. Get you 4 or 5 of them you can just stick in a drawer. So when you need one, you can just call them up and have it activated. They're much easier to deal with than like trying to deal with Verizon or AT&T or anything. So get with them, tell them Surveying with Robert, and they will waive the activation fee. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. So let's talk about static versus dynamic IPs. So think of a static IP, and when we say IP, that's Internet Protocol, right? So everybody on the internet has an address. So if you're not familiar with it, you can go on your computer and you can look and see what your IP address is. So they have what's called a WAN and a LAN, okay? Wide area network or local area network. WAN would be outside of your office, LAN would be inside your office. If you ever see a 192.168 address, that address is a LAN, a local area network. 99% of the time, inside your office, your IP address of your computer is going to be a 192.168. The WAN, which is a wide area network, is going to be the internet outside of your office. So let's say you're connected to Cox, or like I've got Starlink here at my house. So that is going to be your wide area network. That's the internet coming into your office. So if you want to find out what your IP address is at your office, and I know this sounds crazy, but this is literally the website I use. You can get on your computer, you can type in IP as an internet protocol, ipchicken.com. And that will tell you what your IP address is on the WAN side of your network. So the outside network. If your office has a static IP to it, that IP address is never going to change. It's going to be the same, and it may be 10 dot or something like that, right? So you're going to, a lot of places, a lot of businesses will have a static IP for different reasons. The advantage to having a static IP is you know exactly where you're at on the network. An example of that would be if you wanted to send me a big paycheck, just saying if you wanted to, I could give you my address, right? You would send me a check, it would come to my mailbox, right? So, but if you said, Robert, I'm sending you a check to Wiggins, Mississippi, well, that could be anywhere, right? Anywhere in Wiggins, Mississippi would be where you'd be sending that check. So a static IP gives you the address for that person on the network, on the wide area network, the WAN side of it, right? So if, for instance, I've got a 194.132 address on my static IP for my receiver, I could give you that full address. You could key that in, and you could connect up to my receiver from wherever in the world you're at. You can connect up to it. So I've got a couple of static IPs and some different receivers and some 750s that I actually monitor for some people, just kind of help them out. And I can just, if they have a problem, I can just key in that static IP and I can connect right up to that piece of equipment because I know where it's at on the network. So like I say, think of a static as you know the address. You're going to mail somebody a letter and you know exactly where they're at. You could drive right to their house because you have their address. That would be a static IP. A dynamic IP means that that IP address is always changing. It's never the same, right? Every time you fire up your computer, fire up your network, whatever, you're going to get a new IP address. Okay, and sometimes it's a rolling, and maybe tomorrow you'll have a different IP address than you had today, or maybe it's a sticky IP, which means that until you shut down your network and fire it back up, it becomes disconnected and reconnected from the network. It's always going to be that same static IP. Okay, so basically with Starlink, I've got I would call it a sticky IP. Because if I shut my network down and turn it back on again, my IP address will change. That's not really that great. So for a lot of things that I do, with a static IP, I could remote into my computer at the office, things like that, a little bit more secure than like a VPN or something. So there's lots of different things you could do, being able to connect up to your device straight up. GPS receiver. If I have a static IP on it, let's say that I've got somebody deployed out in the field and I need to connect up to that receiver to download static data. Maybe you've sent them out there, they don't have the, you didn't give them the coordinates for the point, so you have to go in and enter it manually, or you know what happens if you start calling them up and you start giving them numbers, right? All of us surveyors are dyslexic, so that creates a problem. But you can literally log into that receiver and set the position of that receiver yourself from 100 miles away, right? So, or from another country if you wanted to. So, static IPs are really valuable. With DAC, the AT&T SIM card, if you tell them you want a static IP, it takes them about a couple of days to get a static IP with AT&T. If you've ever gone to AT&T and tried to just get a SIM card, you know what a pain it is. If you're going to get a static IP, you are probably going to have to plan that out about 30 days in advance, best case scenario, okay? So with AT&T and Verizon. Now Verizon, on the other hand, they can pretty much, if you have a Verizon SIM card, I mean like 3 minutes, Shandy can have me a static IP on Verizon. Unfortunately, Verizon doesn't work very good at my house, so I have to use AT&T. So working with them, they are data only, right? So you're not going to save any money going to DAC and getting SIM cards. So if you think, oh man, Robert, I'll go and, I'll get all these SIM cards from DAC and I'm gonna save a ton of money. You're probably not. You're not gonna save any money. It's gonna be pretty much what you're paying right now, but the advantage is gonna be when you're gonna save money is when you have a problem. When you have a problem and you need to call them up and say, hey, this SIM card's not working, or they know what a TSC7 is, they know what a TSC5 is, all they do is data, they don't do voice. That's when you're gonna save the money by using them. Or like I say, if you need a static IP for a project you're working on. Let's say that you've got a project and you want to put a 750 out there, an R750, and you want that to be a reference station on a project, you just get a SIM card from them, bam, now it's a static IP. And I'm going to show you how you can use an NTRIP connection with a 980 and how that static IP lets me connect to that receiver. So let's look at that real quick, and let me put my old man glasses on, and we'll look at this. Okay, so if I go in right now and I say measure, and I've already got it set up, so we're going to look at it. I'm going to say start base receiver. So it's going to connect up to the 980. Okay, so it's connected up to the 980. It says use existing internet connection because I've already got everything all set up and rolling, but we'll get into that. I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so I'm going to say point number 1. I'm going to go to key in. I'm going to say here, and I'm going to store that. Okay, lever extension, all that looks good. Start. Okay, so now I've got my base started. It's broadcasting. Now let's go to the rover, and you'll see what I'm talking about. If I go to measure, I do my NTRIP. I say measure points. So now it's going to connect up to my R12i that I've got sitting right here. Okay, so it's connected to the R12i, it's building source list. So I'm going to show you, you create a mount point. A mount point is where you're getting your corrections from. So we're getting our corrections from CMRX, so I created a mount point in the receiver called CMRX. I'm going to say accept. See the green check mark at the top. I've actually got a username and password set up in here. And there you go. So now I'm connected cellular between my base and rover using an NTRIP connection. So where the NTRIP connection really comes in handy is like, I had a buddy of mine that was doing some stuff with HiPack, right? So HiPack wanted a username and password. Well, on my system I've got set up, I don't use a username and password. I'm trying to eliminate as much latency as possible. So I give you an IP address and a port, and that's how you connect up. So no username and password on the system that I've got set up. The receivers, all these receivers have the same, pretty much the same software as like an Alloy, a reference station, a core station does, or a NetR9 or whatever. It's got the same web GUI built into it, okay? So, so we can take and use that. I'm going to show you, I'm going to get into that receiver and I'm going to show you how I set this up, okay? So right now it's broadcasting, it's doing its thing. So I am going to go to Chrome, Google Chrome. Okay, and I'm going to type in that address. And I may show you guys this address. I may not, who knows. Okay, so by putting in that address, I was able to get to this thing. So I'm going to use my username and password. I will put in my password. Hit OK. Don't save it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do when you put in a SIM card into that receiver is you're going to want to go in and you're going to put in, you're going to enable it, and you're going to put in dac.com.attz, and that's going to get you to DAC, okay? So the username and password, don't worry about it. It just populate that on its own. You're not going to need it. So once you've got internet connection and everything going, then you want to go to the I/O configuration. Okay, so if we look at the summary, you'll see up here at the top, I've got the IP address and a port in that receiver. So that is actually, that top one, that is for the, to broadcast my base position, okay? So, and you're going to set that up by going in here and you're going to create this configuration. So if, let's say that if I go back to port summary, let's say I choose one of these other ones so I can show you. You can see in here, I can change the port number right there. I can add the port. And if I say client, I can say, there's my IP address and there's my port. That IP address is the IP address for that receiver. The static IP that you got when you got the SIM card from DAC, right? So they're going to give you that IP address. I'm just using port 8000. I could use 5000. I could use 2107. I could use whatever I wanted to, okay? So I just happen to just be using 8000. So you want to make sure you come down here to the bottom where it says disabled. You want to enable CMRX, okay? So what that is going to do is that's going to let you broadcast the base position out. So now we need to connect up with our rover, right? So that's broadcasting the base. So let's go back to our port summary and look, and you'll see NTRIP caster 3 is lit up. So I am connected with my rover. I'm connected up to that receiver, and I'm pulling corrections off of it. So if we go in and we look at that NTRIP caster, I'm using the third one. So each NTRIP caster, if I remember correctly, if they haven't changed it, you could only do 10 connections per caster. So if you wanted to do more than 10 connections, I believe you would have to use another caster to be able to do it. So I don't know why you'd want to run more than 10 receivers off of through NTRIP on a site. But anyways, so what I've done in here is, you notice I said enabled, and I'm saying port 8000. 8000 is the one I'm using. I'm telling that base station to broadcast its corrections to port 8000 on that static IP. Got it? Now in here in the rover, I'm saying, okay, I want my rover to connect up to 8000 on that static IP and pull my base corrections off of it. So then I'm going to put in, don't worry about the identifier or any of that other stuff. That mount point is pretty important. I could call that mount point Robert if I wanted to. I call it CMRX because that's what I'm getting. So I'm going in here and I'm setting up my CMR. There again, I can choose what I want. If I just want CMRX. So you could also do RTCM. So if you had a Topcon or Leica or something like that uses RTCM, you could actually set up a mount point with the RTCM and set the corrections up the same way, right? So 3.3 is probably what you want to use. That's going to have all the satellites, and you would enable it. And then once you're done, you're going to hit OK. And that is going to set that up. Now then, you need a username and password, right? So if we go to security, and we look at security, and I say configuration, and we look, you can add a username and password, and that, whatever username and password you add, you just select NTRIP on there, right? So you're going to select NTRIP, so that username and password, they can use an NTRIP connection, and that way they can, you know, if they're trying to do CMRX or RTCM or whatever, they're going to come in, they're going to see that mount point. So if you set the data collector up, if you set access up for CMRX, they're going to see that CMRX mount point. If you set it up for RTCM, it's going to look for that RTCM mount point. So you can set all that up, and you can put your username and password in here, but I can also set this thing up with that username and password so I can do the receiver configuration, the file download, file delete, edit security, or do NTRIP. I'd say you just want to use NTRIP if you've just got people trying to connect up. You don't want them messing with your receiver, right? So you're going to set the security up. You're going to set up the modem, right? And make sure that's good. You are going to do the I/O configuration. You're going to configure the base station so it will broadcast on 8000. You're going to set the rover up on an NTRIP caster on 8000 so you can pull the correction in. And all that is because you've got a static IP. You cannot do this with just a standard dynamic IP. It's not going to work because that IP address is going to change on you, okay? So that pretty much is the difference between the static and the dynamic IPs. And I know I kind of ran through this a little quick. Good thing about it is it's a video, so you could slow it down and speed it up, right? So I didn't want this to be 45 minutes long. So that is basically what you got going on. That you can use that static IP to do base and rover configuration like that if you wanted to. Great way to do it. If you just want to use a standard SIM card in it, then you're going to use something like IBSS or something like my system I've got, my streaming manager system that I've got set up, either way, to be able to go base to rover. And the static then is at Trimble with the IBSS, or the static is on my server here. This way you put the static on the receiver. So, man, I hope that makes sense. I know I went through it kind of quick. Hopefully that helps you guys understand a little bit more about static versus dynamic IPs and how surveyors can use that to our advantage when we're out working. Because remember, if you're going cell phone, let me warn you about this though. If you're going cell phone based to rover, 6 kilometers is where you start picking up parts million area. What that means is your satellites for your base and your satellites for your rover are now coming through 2 different parts of the atmosphere. As long as you keep it under that 6 kilometer number, both of them are coming through the same atmosphere. You know, I'd say over 20 miles. A day like today, it's beautiful sunny, you can probably get out there about 20 miles. You're pushing it on vertical. Just tell you, 10 miles, I feel pretty comfortable with. 20 miles is pushing it. But if all I'm doing is horizontal, it should still be close enough for what you're doing if you're that far away. If there is different atmospheric condition between the ionosphere and the troposphere, which is the outside atmosphere and the inside atmosphere, if the conditions are different between the base and rover, you're going to have problems. So you want to watch that. Just because you can go 100 miles between the base and the rover, you better not. You will cause yourself all kinds of grief if you do. Trust me, 10 miles about all you want vertical, 20 miles I'm going to say horizontal, and I think you're pushing it, but just so you know, okay? So this, to me, makes it very productive for you to be able to cover more ground, because I absolutely despise radio. Everybody and their brother has the same 14 frequencies. Guaranteed, if you're on a job site somewhere, there's going to be somebody else running the same frequency, and it's going to cause you all kinds of grief. So anyways, that may be another video for another time, right? Understanding the radio stuff and how that works. So anyways, guys, I hope this helps. Hopefully I didn't drag this out too long. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. God bless. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next video.